This podcast is coming to you from Wongal, Gadigal and Birrabirragal country, also known as Balmain, where the Global Centre for Social Justice and Advocacy Leadership is located. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the country we share and agree that sovereignty was never ceded. Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of A Just a Generation. We are coming to you from Gadigal, Wongal and Birrabirragal land now, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Today it is our great pleasure to welcome to the podcast Anthony Ryan. Anthony was born and grew up in Brisbane. In 2009, Anthony was recognised by the Queensland Government with a Queensland Great Award for service to the community, which included Anthony's work in establishing a food van program to assist Brisbane's homeless, street kids and elderly. Anthony has also reached out beyond Australia's shore to South Africa with the development of a foundation to assist underprivileged kids. Anthony served for 4 years as CEO of the Edmund Rice Foundation and another 5 as CEO of Young Care, where he drove the transformation of the national not-for-profit organisation into an innovative and entrepreneurial company that supports young people with high physical care needs. It's an absolute privilege to have you with us, Anthony, and also to welcome an Edmund Rice alumni to the podcast. I'm not sure we've had one outside of Phil Glendenning, so welcome to the podcast.
Well, it's great to be here, Alopi, and thank you for inviting me.
So, Anthony, you've had quite an original and extraordinary career. You're an accomplished athlete, which I'd love to learn more about, having competed and won a silver medal in the World Junior Championships in running in Canada and studied at university to become a stockbroker, which you did, before becoming a high school teacher in economics. That's quite the journey, I got to say. Today, after taking on the role of CEO of 2 large not-for-profit organizations for nearly a decade, here you are picked among more than 100 candidates to become the Chief Executive Officer of Brisbane City Council's Economic Development Agency at a very important time for Brisbane as it prepares to host the Olympics in a few years, which is a remarkable achievement for Brisbane, but boy, a burden for you, I'd say, given my experience of the Sydney build back in the 90s. So this involves, of course, direct input into the 2032 Summer Olympics. Is there a key principle of value which has helped drive and sustain you throughout this diverse and rich career? And if so, was there a defining moment which sparked it?
That's a great question. I think that anything that I've done in my life has always been driven by purpose, and I've only ever been attracted to roles that allowed me to do that. So um, even when I was running as a young man in the Australian junior team and going around the world, even when I was in those competitions, I always wanted to identify, because I knew I wasn't that good, to be honest. I was just good enough to make relay teams. And I was fascinated in the cultures and the places that I was going to. And so I had this incredible privilege to travel to places like Cuba and in the time in 1988 to East Germany, in the place like cities like Leipzig, and seeing all these different cultures and how different economic systems in a way, and seeing how different they were to mine, and I was fascinated by it. So even from that early privilege of representing my country, I was interested in seeing and learning what my place could be in the world. And so eventually I came back to teaching and decided that teaching is where I should be. And there was a defining moment, absolutely, for me in a Year 11 economics class where I was in an Edmund Rice school at the time, Terrace, and Gregory Terrace here in Spring Hill in Brisbane. And we were teaching the price mechanism and looking at market economies. And I asked my class why, as they walked to school or caught the bus into the city, why they went past so many homeless people and street kids, and why were there so many housing requirements for people that were sort of struggling financially. And one of the young men, who is now a friend of mine, I was a young teacher at the time, he put his hand up and he said, "It's because they're lazy, sir."
Mm.
Dad said if they were going to get a job, if they wanted to work hard, they could get a job and get off the streets. And I asked the class that day who agreed, and 100% of the students put their hand up. And Alopi, as you know, education is about telling kids.
Yeah.
It's actually about allowing them to arrive at the answers themselves. And that became a journey from that moment, that economics class. It was about getting those kids, those year 11 economics students, to confront their stereotypes uh, and make their own decisions so they can inform themselves. And so that's how we started things. From that, we started working with programs. Another great Christian brother, guy called Brother Damien Price, and myself, started these street retreat programs where there were immersions where they weren't serving the homeless. They were getting to meet them, speak with them, converse with them, build relationships with them.
Mm.
And it was there that they were confronted by their stereotypes.
Mm.
And we allowed them to arrive at their own answer. And it was, well, these people, just through various circumstances, are on the streets. And it was a really powerful conversion and transformation from what they thought was the truth to arriving at a truth that was so much more deeper. Didn't provide them answers. It was still complex, but it certainly confronted the stereotypes.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the complex things about social justice is, it is, and the context which people find themselves. And this is one of the things for reframing ourselves as a global center for social justice, not to become, a la-di-da organization as a global center, but actually just take the global view and apply it to the local level. Because unless you are cognizant of the broader issues at play, you can get caught up, as you've found with your students, in assumptions or in a bubble of conversation that actually reinforces your own bias towards the situation that people may find themselves in.
Something amazing happened on one of the first nights that we were out. We were quite targeted in the students that we approached for the first times that we went out. We didn't want to choose the students that would be the natural first choice. We wanted to actually get some kids that had a little bit of background and were somewhat challenging to teach, because I thought that would be good in itself. And I can't remember whether it was the first or certainly in the first couple, one of our terrace students was sitting down. And as you know, if you know anything about terrace, it's quite a privileged community, a wealthy sort of school. And, here they are confronting their own stereotypes. And this kid sat down with this homeless guy for about 2 hours and just having a conversation. And in the debrief that we had with them later that night, that young man was really quiet. And then he shared that the guy that he'd been sitting in the gutter with having a conversation was a terrace old boy. And he couldn't believe that a terrace old boy was living on the streets of the city. And that, in a way, became almost one of the catalysts to that becoming embedded into the terrace program, because that kid that had that experience was, a rugby hero. He was an academic. He was very popular, and him telling that story changed the way our school community started looking at the people that they were sharing the suburb with.
It must be one of those revelatory moments, of change in the mindset. I congratulate you on that journey. In terms of inspiring kids to take that step into understanding the context, and you could easily have tried to explain it to them in the classroom, but to actually have them in the tradition of the Christian Brothers as an apostolic order, getting into the community and listening to the community, is something which at the heart of the work that we do, as at the heart of the work that the schools do. is an important tradition, and I think it's also the heart of the charism of Edmund Rice.
Alopi, I loved it because what happened was it became reverse education.
Mm,
So that first answer by that student in the economics class was handed down from his parents, right? So all of a sudden, the students started going back to the dinner table and saying, "No, no, Dad, you're wrong." Um, I actually sat down with this guy and he started talking to me about, um, what was happening in the papers and what was
mm,
happening in the city, and they were really intelligent, and all of a sudden there was a dialogue happening in back outside of the classroom into the people's homes, and then what we found, Pricey and I, is the parents started contacting us and started saying how could they get involved. And so then we started looking at morning programs and getting them involved. And then the teachers did. So it became part of the curriculum, became shared in the classroom, shared at home. And I think it really did at that time become a very powerful um, uh, catalyst to genuine reflection.
if you don't mind, I might push us into the next question, because we might come back to some of the things you reflected on. I was particularly interested, and one of the things we did a few years ago, and maybe we can come back to it, was we did a event for the schools in the Sydney Basin on sports through justice, justice through sports, called Fair Play. And I love the idea which Gillian Daly, when she was on leave, brought to the centre, and because we'd always done justice through the arts, but justice through sport. And I think my daughter's an athlete as well, so I thank you for setting the yeah, the legacy in your space. But she also is a runner and long jumper and triple jumper. But
Oh, great.
I noticed with that group of kids, they were often overlooked because they weren't in the creative space necessarily traditionally, that they were in a space that was more seen as that's what you do at school. You're good at sport. That's what you should focus on while you've got it. But I also thought all of the skills that come with being a disciplined sports person are the sorts of skills you want in great social justice leaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tenacity, competitiveness,
Courage.
ability to not give up, all these things that are, required, resilience. And it struck me in that event we held, it was such a great conversation with the kids. And I was so surprised to see how many of them stood up and wanted to be part of the conversation, to
Okay.
really engage in the content. And it just made me think, we often overlook people like yourself who've gone on to obviously great careers in a range of areas, but where perhaps you may have been pigeonholed. Did you find that at school?
No, no, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I, I felt different ways that I could express myself at school, which was great.
So you've transitioned from the not-for-profit sector to the business sector with great success, and drove not-for-profit organizations you lead to grow and transform financially. And you've also talked about the value of presence, which you apply in your everyday life, including in business interactions. What exactly does this mean in practice to you? And why is it so important in terms of both social justice, but also in leadership?
When I had the privilege of leading Edmund Rice Foundation, or starting Edmund Rice Foundation, really, I was the founding CEO, and I saw that as a great gift, and then transitioning to young care as well. What I felt got me out of bed every morning with those extraordinary businesses was that it allowed me to utilize my skills of networking, the relationships that I've been able to build through sport or through different activities that I happen to fall into, um, and then to be quite strategic in the way that I brought those people together to establish real um, real outcomes for what we were trying to do in all the not-for-profits. So when I was given the opportunity to take on the CEO role of Brisbane Economic Development Agency, I was asked in that question, uh, you've Anthony, you've lived with purpose all your life. You've been driven by that. How are you going to transfer that into this role, which is really competitive, extremely fast paced, dealing with large budgets? And my answer was quite simple, that with Eben Rice, whether it was working with the Mary Rice program at the time in the Canberra slum, or working with the brothers in Marsan or Kabankalan in the Philippines, what they were trying to do, or getting young people with high care disability living in nursing homes at the age of 18, that was just abhorrent to everybody. That was easy, but you could only have small impacts, but they were powerful impacts. But when I got given the opportunity for this role, my answer was quite simple. I've got about 2 million people that I can impact. And I think that business decisions in the past have always been about profit, and have always been about going hard and sometimes ruthless. What if we become a city that everyone looks at and looks at, yes, they've achieved economic growth, they've achieved prosperity for the community, but look what they've done with accessibility. Look what they've done with diversity. Look what they've done with inclusion. Look the way that they've done it. And that was my answer. And I'm pretty, because I reckon out of the 100 or so people applied, I was probably the worst out of all of them. But I think it was that answer that got me over the line, because I said it and truly believed it. And I think I cried at the time when I said it, because I truly believed what an opportunity to be able to impact a city.
And it is an amazing city. I remember Brisbane when I was a kid. My dad did his Bachelor of Divinity in Queensland, so he always related to himself as a Queenslander, even though he was Tongan in the 1950s. And my uncle Taliauli was the first Tongan to play for Queensland in rugby union in the 1950s,
Oh, wow.
Pacific Islander. So it was
Probably knew my
a
father.
I love the photos of those times, because you had the Queensland team, all blonde haired, blue eyed, and then you had this brown skinned Tongan in the middle. But he was such a fantastic player. He was known as Tongan Bob, played for South as well. So he's on the South
I'd
wall.
say he's probably in one of my, it's probably in one of the teams with my father or my uncle, who was playing for Queensland around that time.
All right. Well, there you go. So, how is corporate commercial stakeholder return balanced with social responsibility, especially at the city level? You've talked a little bit about where you came in with that idea, but what are some practical ways you've integrated equity or justice into the strategy at BEDA? Because obviously, it's a big city. It's a metropolis now. It's not the small town it once was. It's got so many bits going on, planning, all sorts of stuff that's happening. I'm interested in how you balance all that.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little insight into my day yesterday, and without breaking sort of commercial confidentiality, but so you get to influence. BEDA gets to influence in this role the type of investment that you want to come to the city. So we're an Olympic city now. Brisbane's the fastest growing capital city in the whole of Australia. We're going to have a $275 billion economy by around about 2040. And we're the closest capital city to the Asia Pacific market. And the Asia Pacific market is extraordinary. It's $90 trillion economy, 60% of the world's population, 47% of the world's trade. And Brisbane is positioned in it. And we've never really understood that role. Sydney and Melbourne have been the power brokers, but all of a sudden now, with the announcement of the Olympics and the Paralympics, what has happened is the brand of Brisbane is exploded onto the global market. And so we've got this incredible interest in wanting to invest in this part of the city. And what I'm excited about is we can then target what that investment is.
Mm.
So in the papers right now, you'll hear of PsiQuantum. So PsiQuantum is going to be the world's first commercially viable quantum computer, and it's coming to Brisbane. And we've been working with PsiQuantum for the last 12 months to assist them in setting up that computer. The best way I can describe it is think of the supercomputers around the world right now. If you can condense that into this quantum computer, that gives you an indication of how powerful it is going to be. What this quantum computer will do will be focusing on life sciences, medtech, biomed solutions. So all of a sudden, you've got this quantum computer coming into Brisbane, which is a game changer for the world. And then what we are now targeting is life science precincts that will sit next to it.
Mm.
So all of a sudden, all the geniuses around the world that are looking at solutions for cancer, solutions for disease, viruses, will be located next to this supercomputer, this quantum computer, and it will create this ecosystem of goodness and solution that humanity will benefit from.
Mm.
So you start thinking of all the areas that when I was in Edmund Rice Foundation and working where disease was a huge impact into those communities. All of a sudden, we're able to target what's going to be a supercharger for biomedical advancements
Mm.
in our own backyard. And that's where we start and where I start getting excited by the opportunity that we get to meet with these people. And I find it so amusing at times. Like I'm in these rooms with people that are genuinely the Da Vinci's of our day. These quantum physicists they're just extraordinary. And I say to them, I am really easily the dumbest person in this room. So you've got to break this down to me. Tell me what this means. And it's just a privilege to be able to understand their vision and how it comes to life, and knowing that out of those conversations where you can just be a link, it might just be linking it with this person, with this government, or with this corporate partner, or whether it be with this travel advisory group, to brings it all together. We're the linker to allow that to happen, and it's bloody amazing.
This is a computer that I heard you can lease time with. Is that correct? That groups will be able to take out chunks of
Correct.
time on the quantum system and to utilize, or is that a different project?
No, that's it. So
Right.
it's you can, and it will come down to the inputs that you put into it. So in a simple way, and this is well beyond my mind, but I'm just working with them as much as I possibly can. That I sort of, when we had investors in the room that were going to be sitting alongside of us, I said, please, this is to the head physicist, just explain exactly what you just said. And he said, well, something that if you wanted to ask a complex question right now with the world's most powerful computer, this will be 1,000 times faster.
Yeah.
So something that would take 1,000 years to answer in that question, we'll do it in a year.
It's amazing.
That was the mic drop. That was just
Yeah.
such a mic drop moment. Everyone went, oh, okay, right.
Well, I feel like it's history repeating, but also in different ways. I'm not sure if you remember back at uni days, if you were around my time, you had to book time with the mainframe.
Yes, yeah.
And get your slot of time and go in. But it also reminds me of the fact that all those tape-to-tape computers back in the 60s, the amount of space and size that it took up all got reduced into a microcomputer.
This one's going to be big. This
yeah.
one will be a couple of
Couple
football
of blocks.
fields. Yeah.
Fantastic. There is now an increased requirement to report on risk related to environmental sustainability in government under ASIC rules, in terms of factors reflecting corporate decisions and actions on community, both positive and negative. Is this perhaps a box ticking exercise and a compliance focused exercise, or is this a real opportunity in this mandatory reporting for organizations to build a narrative that includes their consideration of community and social justice and actually be transformational in their own approach to business?
Yeah, look, first of all, the danger is things become box ticking exercises, as you said. Um, I always use the example of you go to mass, as a good young Catholic boy at school, and you say the Our Father, but you don't even know what you're saying anymore. You just say it robotically. And I think the same can be said with the work that we are doing in sustainability, etc. So the issue that I see at the moment is we're telling people what the rules are, but we're not allowing them to understand why those why we should be doing these things, and telling the story and the power and the beauty of if you deliver business in a certain way, these will be the outcomes. So, for instance, we're now an Olympic city, a future Olympic city. The Olympic rings are the most guarded logo brand in the world.
Wow.
So, if you want to do anything with the Olympics, you have to um, you have to fill, you have to fit into their very rigid rules with regard to sustainability. So people think, oh, well, if I want money, if I want to get into the business, that's it. I think that's the wrong way of approaching it. It's so easy to see ESG as reporting as a box to tick. There's actually a real opportunity here,
Mm.
especially for innovation, I think. Like it should be pushing organisations to think differently about how we operate, the impact that they have, and how they can create value so much beyond profit. And I think that's the key here. I'll give you a couple of key examples of where I think it's working really well. In Brisbane, we're seeing this play out through a business like Rhino Recycling and also another business called Carbonaut. I just let me share them because I think these are great stories. The kind of the innovation that they do just doesn't tick a box. It also attracts investment, so
Mm.
you win on that. It opens up new markets, but it also makes us look at being better. So Rhino Recycling is the best way of saying is if you think of a high rise, and if you're bringing down a high rise, about 97% of those projects usually go into landfill. Now, all of a sudden, Rhino Recycling has come up with an innovative way of utilising all of that 97% of that high rise now to go back into aggregate or to go
Mm.
back into recyclable materials. It's really, really exciting. And so our job is to create the environment for that to become the leading way that you start evaluating uh, an investment opportunity. So that becomes part of the way that you assess something. If you look at a company like Carbonaut, um, they're an early stage agricultural technology company. It's turning rock dust from mines into powerful climate solutions.
Mm.
Um, I've just been with these guys in Japan, and the Japanese market was really interested in how they do this, their technology around the world. What it does, it sort of uses an innovative process called rock weathering. They crush the basalt that's found in abundance near valuable farmland and spreads it across the soil to help farmers move away from synthetic fertilizers. It improves soil structure and it removes the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And it's absolutely quadrupling production of agricultural quality where it's being utilised. So that's where sustainability um, and needs to get better at their storytelling.
Mm.
I think what's happened in the past, particularly with right-wing organisations or, profit-generated businesses, I think there's this stereotype. If you go down that path, you're going to actually cut into your profits. But all of a sudden, you can actually bring the two together if you're smart and innovative in your way and providing an opportunity for a real, genuine win-win situation.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to the circular economy. It speaks
Correct.
to a range of approaches. I mean, it's also about looking at for business. I mean, the problem for many businesses traditionally is that there was a certain amount of free riding on the environment, for instance, so where you got to just pollute and you didn't pay.
Yeah.
And the reality is that was a cost that needed to be accounted for. And if you costed that, you'd look at ways to reduce that cost. And that might be a way to, think through your mind on how to transform the approach you take.
And just going back to those Carbonaut guys,
Yeah.
once again, I think even the duality of this is even smarter, more compelling. Their idea, the founders of Carbonaut, including a mate of mine, Andrew Pedley, happened while they were working in a major mining company where they saw
Mm,
the vast stockpiles of basalt sitting unused. And
mm.
so all of a sudden they started utilizing how can we use that for goodness?
Yes, it's always it was a similar project when I worked on the A program. We had a project called the Market Development Facility that's still going, and they did the same thing, similar thing with lime that was coming out of a cement processing, but where lime wasn't being used in Fiji in agriculture when it was much needed in a lot of that, and they've made
Absolutely.
a transition of what was just a product for one purpose into many purposes, and actually created a much more sustainable
Yeah.
opportunity for those companies. Yeah.
So, in summary, I see economic growth and social responsibility as complementary forces.
Yeah. So, if you could reimagine one aspect of our economic system through a social justice lens, what would it be?
Um, can you repeat the question?
So, if you could reimagine one aspect of our economic system through a social justice lens, so to make it more of a social, I guess, a fairer system, what would it be?
I think it's more looking at collaboration than anything else. So I've got an unusual answer for this. One of the things that I was really surprised about as I started observing how different cities approached economic growth. Sydney, I'm stereotyping here, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but Sydney is, extremely ruthless. It's a profit generated, very competitive environment. Um, Melbourne's the same, and and I think Melbourne has had its guts kicked out of it from COVID, and it's still recovering. And I think they're learning lessons now. But if you look at Brisbane, one of the things that we've tried to do over the last 3 years is instead of creating pillars of competition that exist, that will always exist um, alongside business profitability, etc. We put together what I wanted was called the BEDA Brisbane Alliance, and the BEDA Brisbane Alliance was how do we get those that are decision makers together that sit, some of them within the political process, some that sit outside of the political process, and get them all together to start sharing how they can be better
Mm.
and how they can work together to create better outcomes. And I thought it was a really just an obvious, simple thing to do. Um, but what has happened as a result of that Better Brisbane Alliance, it has created a genuine fraternity of decision makers in the city that know each other, that trust each other, that aren't necessarily competing against each other, but are looking for ways that they can utilize their platforms for greater good. So it doesn't mean that they're not trying to win. It doesn't mean that they're not trying to do other things, but they are also looking at ways that they can work together to create um, better outcomes for the community.
Hmm.
So my answer is, um, if anything that I do, I think I create authentic collaboration in this city that allows us to move forward with better informed decisions, but also looking for greater outcomes for for the people that live in this community.
It's interesting you say that because, my time working in foreign affairs and learning about our region and living in parts of the region and even within the Pacific where I grew up, the there isn't this clear separation for a lot of societies, particularly in Asia, between the environment and the where business operates in its own right. But in fact, it is, as you described, often about these relationships and relational aspects that actually create opportunities to do other stuff within the community and not just to be solely focused on shareholder value and on return. And I guess that's what ESG is all about. It's supposed to measure that and give that way, but in practice, how people approach it will be the difference between it being a real outcome or not. Um, my last question, and I ask this of all our guests: if there were three things you would advise your younger self, given what you know, what would they be? And remembering that you are speaking now to probably a lot of young students from Edmund Rice schools who will be listening to this story intently to know what Anthony Ryan did to get to where he is.
First one is to say yes. Um, I felt that those times that I've said no to challenge or no to adventure are the times in life that I regret. I think that so many people, particularly in this day and age, are dominated by fear or they don't want to stand out from the pack. And I get bored with those types of people.
Hmm.
I think by saying yes, you're putting yourself into a position where you can really challenge yourself to be better, but also you get this one life, live it and see that whole Dead Poet Society saying suck the marrow out of life, carpe diem. I truly believe in that. The second thing I would say is you're really stretching me here. Is that don't be afraid to to wear your heart on your sleeve. Um, I've found so many people are absolutely scared to be outspoken, and they sit in the corner and they live with the regrets. And we've all got those regrets. The moment when you didn't say hello to the girl sitting opposite you on the train, when you should have when you were a young fella, and go, oh, I wonder what would have happened with that friendship. But it's also that sense of when I look back in moments when I've been disappointed in myself is when I didn't speak up when I knew I should. And my greatest lesson that I hope I give my two sons, who both went through Edmund Rice schools, is don't be that bystander that lacks courage. Be the person that stands up for the person in your own on your doorstep. And the final one is to have fun. I think that we take ourselves too seriously at times. I found that so many great things can happen by bringing great people together, but more importantly, just enjoying each other's company. So I go into meetings now, and often I'm meeting with heads of state, billionaires, etc., and they all come in and they're all about, we've got 45 minutes, let's get through this, let's do this. And I break it always down by saying, how's your day? How's your family, etc. And I learnt this when I try to do a challenge every 2 years, a physical challenge. So one of the ones that I did for young care was I walked the Simpson Desert. It's about 300 kilometres.
Wow.
You land out in Birdsville and you walk back land out in Northern Territory, you get choppered out, and you walk back to Birdsville, and it's tough walk. And you don't have your phones out there. Phones don't work. And all of a sudden you start realising in the busyness of your life how these things just dominate your consciousness. And for the first time in my, as long as I can remember, because I didn't have a phone, I started remembering my dreams. I started getting rid of all the grey noise. I started having memories about my dad, when my kids were young, etc. And I realised how busy I am, and therefore away from what truly matters. So for me, it's about turning off the grey noise as well, and allowing yourself to have moments to truly think and understand where you should be going and why.
So seize the day, speak up, and be in the moment.
Correct. That sounds right.
Fantastic advice. And can I say, you are in good company. The others, including Kumi Naidu, Phil Glendenning, and all these other people I've spoken to on this podcast, have that same position you took on, having fun. And I think it's really important thing because people, particularly young people, take themselves so seriously and feel that they need to be something other than themselves, when in fact it is themselves that is what is of value. And I think that's a great thing.
That's beautiful, Alopi.
So thank you for your time, and we'll finish there. And it's been a great chance to catch up with you, Anthony.
Thank you, and hello to everyone, and I hope this helps. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Adjusted Generation. Now it's your turn to take action. Change happens when we come together. So be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode, and consider making a regular donation to the Global Centre for Social Justice and Advocacy Leadership by visiting our website www.erc.org.au/donate. Your support powers real change. Together, we can build a juster generation for all.